Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation on how the nervous system evolved to support the transition from water to land in most vertebrates. I'll explore the key evolutionary changes, but I will be focusing more so on the Cimoria and the Aracelidalia. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I did not. So first up, we have the slide of why the nervous system needed to adapt. When transition happened, life mostly began in water, so it had no adaptations into land environments. Water conducted sound a lot differently than land does, so therefore most of the sensory parts of vertebrates did not have any ability to be used on land, such as light reflects and refracts differently on land than it does water. Sound and any other kind of senses used in earlier water vertebrates were not found. So as they transitioned to land, they needed to go through a whole skew of nervous system developments to actually be able to survive. This leads me to the early aquatic tetrapods. They were fish-like and lived in shallow waters, mostly like swampy lands or anything that wasn't exactly an ocean depth or the depth of a lake, so closely to like a lake shore or a marshland. And when they start developing more so as shallow water aquatic creatures, they started slowly transitioning and getting more nervous system adaptations for both land and water. This included the partial loss of lateral line system. The forebrain had become more developed to introduce spatial awareness, which was necessary to navigate the shallower lands of a swamp or a lake. And that is mostly due to navigating through vegetation. The optic lobes had to increase, excuse me, due to the fact that light is now reflecting and refracting at a different rate than, say, more depth within water. And the vestibular system also had to develop along with the optic nerve system because they had to have more of a balance and equilibrium in order to maintain motion and movement on land or shallow waters. Next, now I will get into the fishapod, the tiktaalik. I hope I said that right. I apologize if I did not. It was one of the crucial transition species that helped introduce land and water vertebrates. They had to adapt a more refined motor control to be able to coordinate fin movements, but also support its own weight on land. It also had to gain improvements into the vestibular area, and this is mostly due to the fact that they had a limited motion of their head, so that had to maintain equilibrium while they were walking, but they also had to have a more refined coordination, since going in between land and water is, I would say, a lot different. So they had to maintain pressure in both land and water environments. So the vestibular area, of course, had to refine itself to be able to adjust in between environments. Their optic nerves also had to enlarge, that way they can scan their surroundings This helped with scanning for prey and also helped with predator detection. And it was a lot different than how they used the linear uh, line system in order to navigate water. Next, I want to talk about the Ischiostega and the Acanthostega. These were our first known tetrapods that had functional limbs for walking. Their nervous system still had to develop slightly because they weren't full-fledged limbs, so they weren't really adapted for land completely. But they did develop the ability to process sounds from the environment on land, and they also refined their motor coordination. This is so that they could walk on land better. They had the drastic loss of their ancestors' lateral line system, so they were more so moving on to just being full land species, but they weren't quite there yet, so they still had to have some form of the lateral line system. Their optic processing went through more improvements, and this is so they had a better ability to detect any land predators and prey for hunting, and also had a better depth perception. It wasn't fully developed, but it was a lot better than, say, the Tiktaalik. Now I will talk about the Simoromorpha, and this was a drastic improvement from the Ethiostega and the Acanthostega because they were fully land dwelling species. So they had actual functional limbs that they were able to walk on land. They had major expansions in their forebrain, and this allowed for more complex problem solving that any kind of vertebrate would need to be on land. Their optic lobes, since they had to rely on them so heavily because light refraction and light reflection completely different than in water, they had to evolve to be able to see their surrounding environments. This was a lot better and more enhanced than their predecessors. Their advanced vestibular senses also improved because now they had to rely on a complete equilibrium balance within their ears so that they were able to move without any kind of imbalance that might disrupt their survival chances. Auditory senses also became stronger, and this was to allow them to hear any kind of predators and prey. And it was a lot different because when you were a land to water, water to land vertebrate, your vestibular senses and auditory senses aren't as fully developed. So you're not going to be able to hear everything around you that is on a land environment. And that is crucial to survivability. Now I will talk about the reptilomorphs and how they are the bridge to amniotes. And I also want to express they are the first ever fully adapted land species and vertebrates that we know of. And they had to go through some drastic nervous system improvements in order to survive on land environments. This included an increased brain complexity that helped with hunting as well as environmental awareness. And that is very crucial because without that kind of system development, their chance of survival is almost none. Second, you have the advanced olfactory senses, and that allowed for long distance scanning of their environment and also included hunting success because without being able to detect your predator or prey, you're going to have a very hard time surviving in a land environment. Better auditory structures, and this helped improve predator-prey interactions. So they were able to detect what is a predator, what is a prey, and they were able to have chance of survival to escape if it is a predator that they can sense, or if it is a prey, they will have massive hunting success because they will be able to eat. And of course, that in turn leads to survival. Next, I will talk about the Areosolidia, which is the first true reptile. And they're completely land-based. They had nervous system that was truly adapted to land and also a more complex brain and nervous system than the first precursor of the reptiliomorphs. They had expanded brain functions in the forebrain that allowed for advanced behaviors for interspecies and intraspecies interactions, which allowed for better mating results, more cooperative interactions in between species. Their vision was also more superior, and they had a higher depth perception than any of their ancestors, which was key to predatory success. So they were able to be the predator instead mostly be the prey. A refined vestibular system was essential, so they were able to have fast, agile movements, which allowed for easier hunting, um, quicker to get away from any kind of predator, and they were also able to find any kind of path in order to hide or hunt. Highly developed olfactory system, which was crucial for scent tracking, and scent tracking also ties in with hunting success because without being able to detect the scent, you have a very low chance of hunting success, but you also would have a lower chance in mating. Lastly, I will talk about amphibians versus amniotes. They are from two different worlds, but they are still land dwelling species. So amphibians are both adapted to land and aquatic environments, but they do not have the complex nervous system or brain function as an amniote does. Also, amphibians will keep their lateral line system when they are juvenile and in development, since tadpoles do spend a majority of their time in water because that's how they grow. Inability to move their heads, so their vestibular system is more simple and not as developed. And they have an underdeveloped olfactory sense because they don't rely on that to hunt and mate. But amniotes are different. They're fully land species and they have more advanced brain and nervous system functions. And this includes a highly developed motor coordination, auditory senses are improved, and olfactory senses are also improved. I am going to ask the question, why do these changes actually matter? These changes matter because without the advanced complexity of the nervous system throughout the evolutionary period, they would not be able to survive land environments, right? So once they go to aquatic to land transitions, if they still maintained all of their aquatic ancestors' traits, they would not be able to survive land. And thus, we would not have any kind of land species at all because these are the pinnacle points of vertebrates that needed to undergo change in order to be fully land vertebrates. And that also helps with their survival, with how the nervous system progressed and evolved. And it shows how truly remarkable the evolutionary time frame between aquatic to land